How's it going, everyone? My name is Shizukira, and today we finally have even more Chaos Zero Nightmare news, and there is a lot. There is this entire interview to go through, and then, okay, not all the stuff down here, and then also this to go through as well. It is a lot. They will both be linked in the description. We will give kind of a summary TLDR of what's being spoken about here, but I'm gonna be honest, if I dug into every question and answer, this video would be over an hour long, maybe even encroaching on 2 hours if I'm giving my opinions on a lot of this stuff. So we are going to be skipping over quite a few things. I'm just going to try and dig out the important things that people are going to be interested in, kind of note some stuff that I found kind of interesting. But this is going to be a huge, just summary TLDR of the entire two interviews. Again, they will be in the description if you want to read them. Down there will also be the Twitch and the Discord if you want to see this game when it goes live, since I will be playing it, streaming it, uploading it, and all that good stuff. So yeah, if you want to see more content from me, or you just want to hang out on the Discord, those things will be below. With that being said, let's get into what we learn in these two interviews. So one of the things I want to point out here, because I know there's going to be some questions about it, there's going to be, some people might be concerned, a bit confused, and that's relating to the mention of AI here. So this section here is essentially referring to the balancing of the game. And I'm just going to read out this little bit here. However, recently, a consulting company specializing in game balancing has been created, and AI has also developed a lot, so we've been able to alleviate some of our concerns regarding balancing. In conclusion, Kazuna, which is the name that they are using for Chaos Zero Nightmare, overcomes difficulties by making the most of AI and balancing consulting companies, and the development team is developing in a way that focuses its capabilities on just having fun. There are about 10 members in the development team who are only dedicated to character deck building and combat. I think you can think of it as being developed with great care. So, we're not talking generative AI, they're not making cards with AI or any of that, but the game is being balanced with the help of AI alongside people. Obviously, this is all in Korean and it's been translated to English, so some things are going to be lost in translation, so make sure to take that with a grain of salt. But this is one of those things that we'll need to wait for the game to come out and see, is the balancing good? In my opinion, if the balancing is good, then there's nothing to complain about. But if the balancing is bad and we have things super overtuned, super undertuned, which I don't think would be the case, but if it turned out that way, then we have something to complain about. We can give the feedback to the devs. Obviously, we're going to be having the limited playtest that's going to be coming soon. So hopefully in there we'll get to see if there's, anything off with the balancing or whatever. But people nowadays see these two little letters and they just absolutely lose their minds. Don't worry about it. It's being used as a tool to help with balancing so that they can focus on the game, focus on making it fun and enjoyable for people. I really don't see this being a big deal, but some people might be a little concerned. So, in my opinion, just wait for the game to come, wait for the limited playtest to come around, and we'll see what the balancing is like. They then talk here a little bit about the barrier to entry. It's something that we heard them talk about during the developer commentary as well. And basically just going over how some of the early deck building is going to go, and how when you start to make your own full decks, they've tried to make it so that you're kind of taking your original decks and improving upon them, right? So you don't really worry about the original deck, but you learn how it functions. And once you've learned that, you then introduce kind of upgraded versions of cards, and it will help you transition from a deck that, you don't even really make at first into a much stronger deck because you've learnt the fundamentals of how it all works. That's really cool that we get a lot of that information there. Another thing that I think was probably kind of obvious, but it's good to get some confirmation, cards will not have a gacha. There will be no gambling for cards or anything like that. They will be farmable things. There will be things that are dropped. It's kind of what this whole section talks about. We get a little bit of information about save data, about cards that drop from monsters. There's certain cards that we won't get to keep. So like here, monster cards are so powerful that they are not designed to be saved. So this whole section kind of goes into detail about that. Each character has about 25 unique cards. If you include public cards, there's around 150 builds per character. So yeah, all the cards and the main functionality of how you build a team and how you build a deck, that is all completely free to play friendly. There is no gacha for that. There is no spending for that. It is earned in game, which is fantastic to hear. Going through a little bit more, we then learn a little bit more about partners, which, if the term partners is new to anybody, here we have the CZN website, and you have these characters that have, you know, these 5 cards, and these are combatants. But then you also get these characters, which are partners and only come with 1 card. So here in this interview, we get a little bit more detail to do with these partners. We actually get to see down here the partner card being used by Priscilla. Is it Priscilla? Yes, Priscilla. So we get to see her ultimate card being used. And yeah, we get a little background on that. We don't know for sure whether characters, or rather partners, are going to have their own gacha. We have seen a little bit further in this interview, we see it in the other one too, that there will be there will be a character every 3 weeks. We don't know if that's just playable characters, because there's another section, which I'll find in a moment, where they mention that on release, there will be about 20 characters. But considering partners are basically the weapons in this game, we're going off the assumption that the 20 characters are 20 playable on-field characters, and the partners are not included in that 20. However, there is a good likelihood that partners will have their own banners. So when they say we're getting a new character every 3 weeks, we're kind of assuming that that's going to be a mix of combatants on field and partners off field. We'll need to wait to hear more about that to get full confirmation of that, but that's kind of the assumption we're working with at the moment. Also, nice little detail to point out here, partners are not exclusive to a specific character and can be worn by multiple characters, but synergy is further maximized when a specific character wears them. So that's just a cool little tidbit that we're getting early on. Also, one thing to point out here, they're talking about competitive content, and I'm going to read this and we're going to look at something from the other article quickly, just to really set this in, because this has been kind of a big topic recently. There is separate competing content being planned. I think it will feel like we are competing with separate abilities that have nothing to do with deck building, so I think it will be a bit different from PvP. I think you can think of it as closer to a minigame score competition. So, different from PvP, but also in this interview, in fact, I will just look for it. There is no PvP. PvE is the center, right? And this is an interview with the same person, I believe. Let me just double check. Yes. Kim Hyung-suk. And yeah, Hyung-suk Kim. It is the same person in both interviews, one saying that the competitive aspects that might be introduced in the game aren't really PvP, and then here just flat out saying there is no PvP, it is a PvE centric game. Now, to kind of throw my own opinion in there, this makes perfect sense. I don't really understand why people thought that they would, like, these people made Epic 7. You really think they're going to put a game out on the market that competes with their own game? Like, there aren't many PvP gachas, especially not many good PvP gachas. So when E7 is kind of like the PvP gacha that's out there right now, why would they contend with that? It just doesn't really make sense to me, but there we go. There's our, kind of confirmation that there isn't PvP in this game. So moving on from that, the translation here is a little interesting, but essentially what we hear about here, and I think we get a little more of it down here, yeah, here we go, is there is a hardcore mode, right? And this is going to be a much harder mode and is not going to be mandatory, but is going to be advised. So honestly, I'm actually just going to read through these 4 paragraphs because I think it's kind of the best way to explain it. This is probably the most I'm going to actually read because a lot of it is easier to TLDR, but I will read through this and kind of take from it what you will. And again, bear in mind, this is all translated. This is not an official translation. This is just like Google Translate doing its thing. So they say here, I think there may be such concerns, which is talking about the worldview being dark and the hardcore mode. Also, quick interjection. This second breakdown image, this is from the hardcore mode, whereas this one that we've actually seen a few times now is from the standard mode. So characters will have a different graphic for hardcore mode. So there's kind of let's be honest, there's another incentive to play hardcore. But yeah, so they say here, I think there may be such concerns. Hardcore mode is more difficult, and when a character dies, more intense directing, such as performance directing, may be used. What is really meant by directing here, I'm not 100% sure, but again, translations is what it is. Hardcore mode is a mode that can be played by people who can endure it, and is designed that it is not focused on unwanted users. However, in terms of training, there are some parts that force it to some extent, and in the end, you have to play hardcore mode to increase the save data capacity. I think you can think of it as an option for users who really want to dig deep into the character. So this is a really important part of it. You do not have to play hardcore mode, but there is incentive to play it. It will increase your save data capacity, which by the sounds of it will let you make stronger decks, have harder hitting cards in your decks. So if you really want to get into the weeds of having the strongest things you can and min-maxing and whatever, you definitely want to be playing hardcore mode. But if you want to be a little more casual, you don't feel like you need the extra power and stuff, you're just kind of logging on, you want to push through the story and whatever, you do not need to play hardcore by any means. And I think that's great. I always ask for us to get something in these games which is difficult, which is challenging for the players who want that, but isn't forced for everyone to do it. Don't put premium rewards behind insanely hard content, but offer the insanely hard content for people who want to do it. If someone wants to challenge themselves, they're going to do it anyway, right? We don't need premium currency incentives to challenge ourselves. If you just give us difficult things to do, we will do them. They then go on here to say save data is closely related to the keyword forgetting, and when you end the challenge, the experience remains in a chipset called save data. This is a storage of memories from chaos, and if you've had a very harsh and difficult time, your mind will become unstable and your save data will become unstable. In that state, it becomes difficult for the character to enter the battlefield again. So what it sounds like is as we go through these kind of dungeon crawler-esque game modes, we can lose having our characters in that run just completely because of mental breakdowns. What I'm kind of getting at here is there's a lot of mechanics that we have no idea about, and it feels like a lot of this is just scratching the surface. I won't read these two. If you want to read them, they're on screen now, but also, again, it's in the description, because they also mentioned previously about seasonal cards, and now here they're talking about losing save data. There's kind of a lot of different things to piece together and to wrap our heads around. Again, when the game comes out is when we'll get like a full understanding of it, but for now we can at least get a bit of insight into what's to come. And by the sounds of it, there's a lot to come. There's a lot of information here. There's a lot of systems that interact in ways that we don't quite understand yet, but this bit of insight is amazing to have. Here, we're just getting a little bit of information about the affinity system, you know, spending time with the characters, giving gifts to the characters and all that stuff. They even do specifically point out here, like Blue Archive or Nikke, which is something I mentioned in my last video, and yeah, here we are. This is exactly the kind of thing we're getting. I don't think there's too much to really go over here. That being said, there is an emphasis here, and it's mentioned a little earlier as well, to do with the player's psychological counseling is provided periodically with the character. It seems like there's going to be some interactions with you play the roguelike mode, you build up save data. You can, in some instances, lose that save data. There are ways to retrieve it, or potentially there are ways to mitigate it that will require spending time with the characters and stuff. It's an interesting system that we don't really have too much kind of, you know, concrete understanding of, but there is an interesting thing there where the affinity system might be more than just an affinity system, which I think is great. Again, there's a lot of kind of interweaving parts that we're being told there's this, we also have that, we also have that, which interacts with this, but without having some really hands-on kind of exploration of what these mean in context, what these mean for gameplay, it's hard to fully understand them. But what's honestly fascinating to me is just hearing that there is so much going on. And as we've heard time and time again, they've had a huge emphasis on the onboarding of new players, on lowering that barrier to entry. So on one hand, I'm a little worried because it is a lot of things to teach people, but I'm also very hopeful because there has been such an emphasis on that onboarding process. That does give me a lot of faith that they knew people were going to be jumping into a world of hell with this game, but they were like, look, we need to make this as easy as possible for people to get into. So they have the high end for the people who really want to get stuck in it, but they also have the low end where it's like, look, here are the basics of what you need to know. Here is how you upgrade from A to B. Have fun with the knowledge you have. You do not need all this other knowledge, but it's there if you want to seek it out. And that kind of mostly wraps up the important parts of it. There is this here. There are approximately 20 types of characters at launch. We are updating once every 3 weeks and preparing to continually introduce new content and characters. So actually interesting. This is something I misread earlier. There are approximately 20 types of characters at launch. So that's quite interesting. We need to see what's really meant by that. Because, you know, are we going to say that every faction is a type of character, every element is a type of character, every, you know, class is a type of character? I'm kind of curious how they're defining types of characters at launch here. But actually, this means we may be getting more than 20, which is really cool to hear. And then the other thing to point out for kind of the lore heads out there, they mention, it says Kylon, they're talking about Kayron here from Epic 7. It says, you can assume that there was a connection in the beginning that inspired Chaos Zero Nightmare's worldview, and it may be more related depending on the direction in which it develops in the future. I just want to leave it at that. So here we're kind of saying that parts of Epic 7 inspired the creation of the world of Chaos Zero Nightmare, but doesn't necessarily coexist with it. And we get more proof of that when we come over to this interview again, which we're going to start reading through in just a moment. Yeah, here it is. So it says here, among the characters introduced in the last showcase, users who played the previous work, Epic 7, showed very familiar faces. Is it the same character as the previous work? So referring to Kayron here. I'm also curious about whether Epic 7's worldview is connected or related. And he says, there is no connection. There are cases where characters with the same design and name appear in other subculture works with different worldviews. It can be seen as a similar case. So I think we're kind of drawing parallels to, for example, kind of what we see in Star Rail and stuff, where we see characters from other games that are made by them, you know, so we look at examples of Steela, for example, right? We have Steela Valeri in both Honkai Impact 3rd and in Star Rail. We obviously have like Raiden Mei, who is Raiden Shogun in Genshin Impact, is Acheron in Honkai Impact, in Honkai Star Rail. And it seems like it's a similar thing here, where it's like, we may have those characters show up in these games, but the worlds of these games are different. They are not the same world, they are not the same universe, they are completely separate things. We just may bring in crossovers. So that's what it's kind of sounding like here, but again, we'll need to see more. And yeah, he just kind of goes into a bit more detail here, saying like, yes, the inspiration for Chaos Zero Nightmare is stuff that was in Epic 7, but Epic 7 has changed so much, and they even mention somewhere up here that the game has been in development for like 4.5 years. Yeah, development first began 4.5 years ago, right? So the roots of the game is not the direction they're going in anymore, but they still have those roots. So for people who played Epic 7, you're still going to have your callbacks, you're going to have, you know, things that are similar between the two games, but they are two separate games through and through, at least currently. That being said, let's start to break down the second interview a little bit, because this is already dragging out, and this is the massive TLDR. There is so much more to actually read. So, for people who are wondering, it is scheduled to be released within this year. We kind of already knew this. We have the expected release date on the App Store, which, if to be believed, is October 15th. We haven't had anything official, but this is the closest we've had to that. It is scheduled to be released within this year, which technically means any time in the next 4 and a bit months, but ideally we'll be getting this in less than 2 months, which would be amazing if we did, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. So we get the question here of how spicy is hardcore mode. This is really cool to see. So they're saying here, there is death production when a character is attacked by a monster, and this production can only be seen in hardcore mode. Once you enter a battle, you cannot leave. I'm curious what this means by death production. Again, I'm assuming this is a translation thing, but it is cool that there's going to be mechanics that are unique to hardcore, making it harder. We did see, I believe it was in the dev commentary, where they were talking about how there's different modifiers and stuff to adjust difficulty. And it seems like this would be like something that is always set there and is just another way to increase the difficulty of hardcore mode. They go on to say, when playing mobile games, if the stage is blocked, there's usually an option to just give up all the loot or action skills and leave. But hardcore mode doesn't even work. I assume they mean in hardcore mode, that doesn't even work. Either the monsters kill all the characters, or the characters kill all the monsters and break through. Of course, this is true when entering battle and in situations other than combat situations. If you give up the exploration midway and return urgently, you can take the records you had cleared up to then. So yeah, what this is basically saying is that when you go into a battle in hardcore, you commit to that battle. And if you don't make it out alive, GG is what it is. You can leave when you are outside of battle and you can take the rewards you've gathered up until then, but you really need to make the decision, can I take on this next stage? Because if you can't, you are risking, by the sounds of it, you risk losing everything that you've earned on that run so far. It does sound like hardcore is going to be pretty brutal. I'm going to be honest, I absolutely love that. They say here, ordinary mobile game users will find these things cumbersome, but I hope that users who like it will definitely enjoy it. Again, we're getting that emphasis of, if you are a more casual player, you do not need to play hardcore. But for the people like me, if it wasn't obvious enough, who really want this hardcore mode, they're going in with it. They're like, oh, you want challenging content? We'll give you challenging. You want something that's hard? You want something that's brutal? Say less. You can't leave the battle, and if you do, you leave with nothing. And I have never been so happy to play a mode in my life. It honestly sounds amazing, and I cannot wait to get my hands on that, because I want to see, how hard is this? How much do I need to lock in? What is the risks of not doing well enough? We then get quite a lengthy discussion on kind of the atmosphere of the world and how dark it is and stuff. And I'm not too surprised we have so much discussion around this. It was brought up in the dev commentary. We had a little bit of it during Protogenesis, and we're getting it in this interview. We got it in the last interview as well, where we're talking about the world being so dark and, oh, will people like how bleak and stuff it is? And they've kind of expressed several times, and I think this puts it quite nicely. To put it more explicitly, the idea is to express each character's personality first, but depict the process by which the character falls into despair and is ruined. As I emphasized many times, the worldview of Chaos Zero Nightmare is extremely hopeless and dark. Can you live while maintaining your own personality while facing that despair and darkness? The core of this game is to ask such questions and express them clearly. This is so good to hear, because again, this is another thing I've been looking for a long time, a game that is genuinely dark, a game where it isn't just, don't worry, no one will actually die because the magical magical unicorn from Rainbow Land will come to fucking save the day. That's not happening. There is no magical unicorn here, and that's amazing. And it's great because we do have lively moments. We heard it during the dev commentary that there are, on these arcs, we have a lot of life on them. You know, they mentioned the schools, they mentioned the districts. So there are more upbeat moments to the game. It's not all doom and gloom, there is positivity. But the core of the game is this that he's saying here, to express the personality, but depict the process by which they fall into despair and are ruined. This is not going to be for everyone. A lot of people are going to be put off by this. A lot of people aren't going to be comfortable. I honestly, given the emphasis with the game kind of focusing on the different traumas of characters and stuff, I can see a lot of people having parts of this game that they're not fully comfortable with. And I understand that. People are not comfortable when facing topics like this a lot of the time. It is what it is. There's things that I'm also not comfortable facing. There's things that we're all not comfortable facing. Me personally, I want a game to bring those things out, but I fully understand if people don't want that. This game will not be for everyone, and that is okay. We have yet to see how dark it will get, how detailed it will get. So we don't know how deep it's going to get, but I'm excited for it. I'm very excited for it. We even see here, there are times when trauma accumulates to the point where it cannot be treated at all, or when you choose memory erasure due to cost. If you erase memory, the save data accumulated while playing that character will be destroyed. Instead of having such a penalty, there is no cost. So again, it really hits you because you might build up a character you like, and they mention in the first interview as well about how there will be cards unique to each season. So assuming once the season is over, you can no longer get those cards, what happens when your favorite character has a card that is from a season that is no longer active, and something happens and you need to memory erase that character? Can you get that card again? Can you go through with erasing that character's memory? It's really interesting. Again, I mentioned this a little bit when reading the first interview. There's a lot of stuff that we don't fully understand and won't fully understand how it really works mechanically in game until we get our hands on it. But just the prospect of reading these things is super, super interesting to me. So this next section here is something that I think is worth taking the time to read. But it comes from here. Routines are short and concise, and season updates are being prepared at 9-week intervals. So we saw before that they were mentioning 3 weeks we would be getting new characters. And we're seeing here that 9 weeks, I'm assuming, it says here season updates are being prepared at 9-week intervals. I will read a little bit here where they say here, it seems clear that the routine playtime of mobile games has been getting shorter recently. We've reached a level where it's over once or twice, and even large Chinese open world games are clearly reducing the playtime required for daily quests. As such, it was designed to not increase time in repetitive parts, but to the extent that daily quests, such as basic daily dungeons or something like that, do not deviate significantly from the recent subculture game routine. So what I'm hearing from this is they're trying to keep in line with the kind of playtime that you expect from a lot of these games, but they don't want that playtime to be in repetitive things where you're doing the same thing every single day. They want it to be that you're spending more time on something you enjoy, and that is how you are clearing out, getting your dailies done, getting your weeklies done, whatever. It's not just going in, doing the same thing every single day and, collecting your dailies. It's to have you spend more time in the parts that are actually fun about the game, and that will help with clearing your dailies. And they talk a little bit more here about chaos mode and talking about optional rewards that appear and stuff. So again, I think a lot of this is definitely worth taking a moment to read through. And then just to give a super quick TLDR of the next few sections, here they are talking about kind of the onboarding and talking about the accessibility here. The next part after that is what I mentioned before with the no connection between this game and Epic 7. And then they mentioned the no PvP here as well. And then we are back to talking about the 9-week intervals. And it does actually say here, though it's in 9-week increments, it's actually divided into 3-week increments. So again, we saw that before with the new characters being added. And it says here, every 3 weeks, one main scenario is added. In terms of episode 1, it's about 8 to 10 episodes, and if you include sub-stories in addition to the main story, it's about 15 episodes long, and the main story is being prepared with full dubbing, which is great to hear. We already knew that it was going to be completely dubbed. Again, this was in developer commentary, but yeah, so taking a look at this, assuming, it says here, in terms of episode 1, it's about 8 to 10 episodes. So if we're assuming that this is what they mean by one main scenario, 8 to 10 episodes, you're looking at roughly 6 months or so for one episode to be done. That might not be what they really mean by dividing it. Maybe it's one episode every 3 weeks that have 8 to 10 chapters in it, or maybe it's one chapter every 3 weeks and episode 1 has 8 to 10. So episode 1 will be about 6 months long. We have yet to see exactly what this means, but yes, every 3 weeks we will get main story content, and every 9 weeks is a new season. And that's kind of it for the important parts. The rest of the interview, they're kind of talking about more of the vibe of the game and why they've made some of the creative decisions they have, some of the visual decisions they have. Some of the images aren't loading for me at the moment, but you can just open them in a new tab and see like what's being shown. So here they were showing off one of the animations. I think this one here is one of the background images. Yep, so here you go. This is one of the backgrounds. So you can open these pictures up. But yeah, that mostly wraps it up. We see here, as a side note, the bad ending of Trauma Code is quite harsh. So it seems like it's kind of a story mode as well in its own right. It says, should I say, it feels like there are no dreams or hopes. However, since there is a user base that is resistant to dark stories, a lot of effort is being made to not cross a line to some extent. So this, while the game aims to be incredibly dark, it feels like they're not trying to make a game that is going to cause you to have genuine, real existential crisis and genuinely reconsider life decisions or anything like that. It feels like they are trying to keep it to some extent light enough for people to be able to consume. I do feel like, given the wording of some of the other parts, there will still be a lot of people who find it hard to consume. Um, but they are trying to make it light enough that you don't need to look at the game and be genuinely concerned that, oh, maybe for my own health I shouldn't play this game. It seems like they are trying to keep it in some kind of line, but again, we just need to wait for it to come out. That's what a lot of this comes down to. A lot of these two interviews basically come down to, we need the game to come out so we can really see. Um, but yeah, this has already gone on way longer than it needed to. And that's with me skipping out a lot of mostly behind the scenes stuff, mostly things that aren't necessarily relevant to gameplay. Although there are some gameplay things that, I would have missed and stuff. There's a lot of information in these. Even after reading it through several times, I feel like I haven't even fully digested everything. But yeah, again, these will both be in the description, as well as a link to my Discord and my Twitch, where I will be playing and streaming the game as soon as I can, and as soon as I can get more information out to you guys. I'm also already working on having character builds and guides and whatnot, so access to those will be available first on the Discord, and eventually I'll make videos about it and publish it more. But if you want access to that early, that will be in the Discord. Anyway, let me know what you guys all thought about these two interviews. I'm sure we'll be getting even more news as we kind of ramp up here. We went from having nothing for a month and a half to the dev commentary coming out to both these interviews coming out, and there's definitely going to be more to come. So again, let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.